Today, former US President Donald Trump ordered to pay writer E. Jean Carroll more than $100 million in damages.
We will immediately appeal. We will set aside that ridiculous jury.
The UN's top court calls on Israel to prevent acts of genocide in Gaza, but stops short of demanding a ceasefire. Emergency crews work to restore power and repair damage in the wake of ex-tropical Cyclone Kiry.
And Medvedev battles back from the brink.
And Daniil Medvedev fights back from 2 sets down to reach the Australian Open final. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Stephanie Borys. A jury in a defamation trial against Donald Trump has ordered the former president pay writer E. Jean Carroll tens of millions of dollars in damages. Mr. Trump has already been found liable in a separate civil case for sexually abusing Ms. Carroll in the mid-1990s and then defaming her by calling her a liar. North America Bureau Chief Jade McMillan has the details from Washington.
This is a huge win for E. Jean Carroll in her second defamation case against Donald Trump. A jury in New York City has ordered the former president to pay her more than $83 million. That works out to around 126 million Australian dollars. This was a civil case and it followed a separate civil defamation trial last year in which Donald Trump was found liable for sexually abusing Ms. Carroll in the mid-1990s and then defaming her by calling her a liar. The jury in that trial awarded Ms. Carroll $5 million in damages. And what this second case was really focusing on was statements that Mr. Trump made in 2019 when he was president that Ms. Carroll argued made her a target of online abuse and death threats. The jury in this case has awarded her around $18 million for emotional and reputational harm and $65 million in what are known as punitive damages. They are damages that are aimed at punishing a defendant. And her lawyers had argued that the jury really needed to consider an unusually high number for those damages to try to stop Donald Trump from continuing to criticise, to verbally attack Ms. Carroll, as we've seen him do so. He had left the court before the verdict was delivered, but he's since taken to his social media platform Truth Social to describe this outcome as absolutely ridiculous, and he says that he will be appealing. He has always denied wrongdoing in both this case and in the first trial, and he's argued, as he has done in all of the various court cases that he is facing, that he's been unfairly treated. That was a message that was reinforced by one of his lawyers when she spoke outside court briefly.
And guess what my client did? He took the stand. He abided by the rules of this corrupt system that I have seen. We will immediately appeal. We will set aside that ridiculous jury. And I just want to remind you all of one thing. I will continue with President Trump to fight for everybody's First Amendment right to speak. Everybody's a right to defend themselves when they are wrongfully accused and to be able to say, I didn't do it. And to double and triple and quadruple down and say, this is wrong. This is wrong.
Just to reiterate, this was a civil case, so while Donald Trump has been ordered to pay those tens of millions of dollars to E. Jean Carroll, he isn't facing the prospect of any jail time. But separately, he has been charged in 4 criminal cases. He's facing 91 charges. 2 of those prosecutions are at a state level and 2 are at a federal level.
The United Nations top court has stopped short of ordering Israel to cease its attacks on Gaza as it considers allegations of genocide made by South Africa last month. At a hearing in The Hague, ICJ President Joan Donoghue delivered an interim judgment saying the humanitarian situation in Gaza is catastrophic. She's imposed several conditions on Israel, saying the nation must take all measures to stop harming Palestinians in Gaza and prevent genocidal acts, but did not order Israel to stop its military operation altogether. A Palestinian official described it as a momentous decision, a sentiment echoed by South Africa's president.
This order means that the court recognized the gravity of the situation and was convinced by South Africa's compelling presentation that was based on law and fact that there are plausible cause to believe that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza.
As the South African government, we welcome the decision of the International Court of Justice. We note the court's statement that it is acutely aware of the extent of the human tragedy that is unfolding in the region and is deeply concerned about the continuing loss of life and human suffering, and that the catastrophic humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip is at serious risk of deteriorating further before the court renders its final judgment.
For more on this, Isabella Higgins reports from The Hague.
Hundreds gathered here in The Hague to be here for this highly anticipated decision. Now, this is the UN's top court, and while this feels a long way from the conflict in Gaza, the decisions made here today are legally binding for signatory countries, including Israel. It was South Africa that brought this case to the World Court, accusing Israel of committing genocide against Palestinians in its military actions in Gaza. In initial legal arguments heard earlier this month, Israel claimed South Africa was distorting the truth and claiming its actions following the October 7 attacks by Hamas followed international law. Today's ruling finds that South Africa has a plausible case under the Genocide Convention and implements provisional measures aimed at reining in Israel's assault in Gaza. South Africa had asked the court to call for a ceasefire. Now, the court stopped short of ordering a military pause, but found that Palestinian population in Gaza was at real risk of irreparable damage. The majority of the court's 17 judges agreed that Israel should do everything in its power to avoid genocidal acts. This includes ensuring they avoid killing Palestinians, causing bodily or mental harm, or preventing women from giving birth.
The court further considers that Israel must take immediate and effective measures to enable the provision of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance to address the adverse conditions of life faced by Palestinians in the Gaza Strip.
After this order was handed down, hundreds of pro-Palestinian supporters started chanting "Ceasefire now" and "Free Palestine." While this decision was being read out, there were moments where they erupted with applause and embraced each other. Just a few hundred metres down the road, dozens of pro-Israel supporters had gathered. Now, they were separated by a large police presence outside the Peace Palace complex. Already, Israel's representatives have been dismissive of this interim ruling. So the question now is, will this have any impact on the reality on the ground in Gaza?
Following that ruling, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu once again rejected the accusations of genocide and vowed to press ahead with the war in Gaza. Mr Netanyahu slammed the ICJ after it declined to throw out the genocide charges, describing its decision to debate the claim as a mark of disgrace.
Our war is against Hamas terrorists, not against Palestinian civilians. We will continue to facilitate humanitarian assistance and to do our utmost to keep civilians out of harm's way, even as Hamas uses civilians as human shields. We will continue to do what is necessary to defend our country and defend our people.
For more reaction on the provisional measures issued by the ICJ, let's hear from our Global Affairs editor, John Lyons.
Here in Ramallah in the West Bank, there'd been a big build-up to the verdict of the International Court of Justice. Afterwards, there was a sense of disappointment that the ICJ had neither found against Israel for genocide nor ordered an immediate ceasefire to the war in Gaza. Today we went to a mosque where the imam called on all of his followers to pray for the people of Gaza. Palestinians here in Ramallah have also been extremely appreciative of South Africa for bringing the case to the ICJ. South Africa's representatives here in Ramallah joined with a lot of Palestinians today to watch the verdict of the ICJ.
We really hope that the court outcome can have the picture in Gaza alter dramatically in favour of silencing the guns, in favour of peace, in favour of humanitarian relief, and that Gazans can really begin to just rebuild their lives and have the opportunity to live again.
So what were you feeling while you were sitting there watching today?
I was disappointed because what I aspired for and I wanted is an immediate ceasefire and that all the humanitarian aid will go into Gaza. But let's not forget that this is a historic moment and we're very grateful and thankful for South Africa for taking the courage to file this case. In the West Bank we have daily incursions and we have settler violence. And we have 7,000 Palestinians arrested since the 7th of October and 509 Palestinians killed. And my fear that the situation will escalate.
From the Israeli side, there's been obvious joy and relief at this verdict. Israelis say that it justifies that they should never have had an allegation of genocide made against them, that they have been defending themselves against the attempt of genocide by Hamas, as typified by the atrocities of October 7. Where it goes from here is that major players like the US are now going to try to bring together a permanent peace deal in Gaza and then work out what happens next, how to rebuild Gaza.
Emergency crews are working across North Queensland to restore power and clean up in the wake of ex-tropical Cyclone Kiry. The system brought down trees and power lines when it crossed the coast near Townsville on Thursday night, but the region largely avoided major damage. Electricity outages are the main concern, with around 48,000 households still offline. The state's Premier, Stephen Miles, says crews are making good progress, but there's still a long way to go.
The Ergon workers are absolutely focused on getting the power back on for that critical water, wastewater, as well as telecommunications infrastructure. That's their first priority. They tell me that they're confident that most of that power should be reconnected today.
Federal Emergency Management Minister Murray Watt has been touring the region and says discussions are underway on how to ensure infrastructure is sufficient to deal with these severe weather events that are becoming more frequent.
What we are doing is trying to retrofit existing homes to make them more resilient for these kinds of events as well. That disaster ready fund that I just mentioned to you, one of the big components of that in round one was a $40 million investment between the Queensland Government and the federal government in another round of the Household Resilience Program. And what that's intended to do is to assist low and medium income earners do things like tie down their roofs more strongly or change some of the building materials in their house so that they actually are more resilient when we see these events occur.
Perth Lord Mayor Basil Zempilas has confirmed he'll try to enter state politics, seeking Liberal pre-selection in the seat of Churchlands. Zempilas, who was re-elected as Lord Mayor just 3 months ago, said he would seek a leave of absence during the campaign and would return to the position of Mayor if defeated in the election. The announcement ends months of speculation about his step into state politics. 2 people have been injured after a large tree branches fell in Perth's Kings Park. Thousands of people were gathered in the park last night to view the Australia Day fireworks display when the branches fell. Eyewitnesses say ambulances arrived at the scene within minutes of the incident. A woman in her 20s and a male teenager have since been discharged from hospital with minor injuries.
One hit me across the back and then another one hit me on the back of the head and pinned me face down. So I was had enough strength to push the branch off me, and I stood up, and the next minute I had a lump the size of an apple on the back of my head, and all of a sudden there was all these other people lying down in spinal precautions and everything lying flat.
2 men have been sentenced for conspiring in connection with the 2002 Bali bombings. The jury in a US military court sentenced them to 23 years of confinement, but they'll serve far less due to a pre-trial agreement. Emily Grimmins is at the Fort Meade military base in Maryland with the details.
Two Malaysian detainees, Mohammed Farik bin Amin and Mohammed Nazir bin Lep, have been held in Guantanamo Bay since 2006. They were charged in 2021 but entered plea deals late last year. And sentencing proceedings in Guantanamo Bay have been underway for the last several days and been beamed to other US military bases, including this one here at Fort Meade in Maryland. As part of those proceedings, we heard from family members who lost loved ones and spoke about their unfathomable loss. 202 people died in the Bali bombings, including 88 Australians. Family members spoke of young people who'd been robbed of life, torn away from their partners, friends, siblings and parents. The court also heard statements from the two accused men who renounced their terrorist pasts and said that they were deeply sorry for what they'd done. A panel of jurors has handed down a sentence of 23 years of confinement, but due to a pre-trial arrangement that was in place, the details of which largely still remain under wraps, the court heard that these two men are unlikely to serve more than about a further 5 years. Their alleged ringleader, a man named Hambali, remains in Guantanamo Bay and is going to be tried early next year.
The Prime Minister has condemned neo-Nazi activity after police swooped on a group of masked men on a Sydney train yesterday, being Australia Day. Police say approximately 61 men wearing black and their faces concealed were seen boarding a train on Sydney's North Shore on Friday afternoon. They then congregated at a nearby park where they chanted racial slurs and produced a banner referencing a neo-Nazi group. 57 fines were issued and 6 men arrested. 2 have been released overnight.
I was horrified by those images. They have no role in Australia. I don't want to see people in balaclavas, dressed in black from head to toe, who are engaged in neo-Nazi activity in this country. It has no place, and it is rightly being condemned by all decent people. This was shocking, the numbers of people. And we have seen a rise in neo-Nazi activity, on extreme right-wing activity. The Director General of ASIO has been warning of this for some time. And I congratulate the New South Wales Police Force. They took urgent and immediate action to dispel what could have been a very dangerous activity indeed. And on Australia Day, where we commemorate everything that is great about this country, we have a responsibility to look to what unites us, not what divides us. And I say to these people, quite frankly, have a good look at yourself. There is nothing to be got in this country through hatred.
The picturesque seaside town of Apollo Bay in southwestern Victoria is a popular place for visitors, but it is coming at a cost to the local residents. Affordable housing has become very difficult to find because rents have skyrocketed and many homes are now short-stay accommodation. It's led to people moving away and therefore a worker shortage. Mayor of Colac Ottaway Council Marg White says the situation is worsening.
Apollo Bay isn't the only town or centre that is faced with these problems. It's a statewide, worldwide problem. But I think Apollo Bay's has got more complexity because of the geographical isolation. It's not a town where people can commute to, so that adds a complexity. But what are we doing? Look, council have acknowledged this for years now and declared a housing crisis a good few years ago. There's been a number of smaller strategies that have been tried, things like writing to ratepayers and asking them would they consider taking their houses off the short-term market and putting it in for long-term rental. We've changed some local laws to enable people to put caravans on their properties to enable staff to stay in the peak periods. But on a bigger level, we need to advocate to governments and take opportunities that the governments are now rolling out to put a spotlight on the crisis in Apollo Bay and the challenges that they're facing. It's a multi-pronged approach, and it's going to take some real effort on all levels of government to really tackle the problem together.
After multiple years and countless kilometres, Tasmania's travelling piano has found a permanent home. A final performance in the state's Huon Valley was a fitting and bittersweet farewell for pianist Kelvin Smith.
Setting the stage for one last performance. Since 2019, Kelvin Smith has been keeping a promise: to play piano in beautiful places.
Any of the places that I've been in, there's just been one or two moments where I'm just totally in tune with the piano, beautiful instrument, in a beautiful environment, and it's just like, this world rocks.
It's an endeavour that's taken him from beaches to sidewalks and all the way to the enormous Gordon River Dam.
Even the simplest of locations, just wheeling it out into the backyard, you know, the local park, the local beach. Having a piano outdoors, there's something beautiful with that.
However spectacular, the travel has left the piano with its fair share of wear and tear. Kelvin now making the call that it's time for the instrument to retire.
Flying through the air under a helicopter is one thing, or hanging from a crane on the wharf in Hobart is another. It's got its own little stories to tell and battle scars to go with it. By anyone's account, you know, it's had a good run.
Having had one last performance, the piano will now stay at Tahoon Adventures in Tasmania's Huon Valley. The scenic location, a fitting home.
He came here the first time and played on the weekend we opened after the fires. I think Kelvin, from what he says, would like to see people tinkle on it. Obviously, we don't want to get any damage, even though he says it's fairly worn out, but it's a lovely piece of memorabilia.
With this piano now finding its new home, Kelvin says it's time for a break and to focus on other projects. But he's not ruling out a comeback tour somewhere down the line.
Tasmania has so many awesome locations, and they're never going to stop calling me.
Meg Whitfield, ABC News.
The men's singles final lineup at the Australian Open has been decided, with Jannik Sinner and world number 3 Daniil Medvedev winning their semi-finals. And the women's title will be decided tonight. For more, let's speak to our reporter Erin Masikovetera at Melbourne Park. Erin, tell us about what happened in the men's semi-finals.
Well, there was a couple of really thrilling men's semis yesterday, Stephanie. Daniil Medvedev staging an incredible comeback late last night against Alexander Zverev. He was down by 2 sets and fought back in the third. He said he started playing more aggressively in that third set because he didn't have it in him to play a really long match. And he managed to turn the match on its head, winning the third set in a tiebreak, the fourth in a tiebreak, and the fifth 6-3. So he's through to his third Australian Open men's singles final. He does have one Grand Slam final to his name already, the 2021 US Open, but we will have a new men's singles champion here at Melbourne Park. He's going up against Jannik Sinner, the Italian. Sinner winning yesterday in 4 sets against Novak Djokovic, the 10-time champion, so no easy feat there, knocking him off on his home turf. Sinner winning 6-1, 6-2, 6-7, and then closing out 6-3. He's into his first Grand Slam final, so uncharted territory for the Italian. And he goes in as the youngest men's singles player since 2008. He really has had quite a dominant run in this tournament so far. Yesterday, his third set that he dropped to Novak Djokovic, that was the only set this tournament that he's dropped so far. So he has dominated and playing very cool, calm tennis. And Daniil Medvedev, though, by contrast, he's played 3 5-setters in this tournament so far, and you might think that would have depleted his energy going into this final tomorrow night. But have a listen to what he had to say in his press conference afterwards. He seems to be energised by the challenges that he's faced so far.
Mentally, 100%. I'm stronger than I was before this tournament because now I know that I'm capable of some things maybe I thought I'm not because before I didn't do anything like this to get to the final. So mentally, I'm stronger than before and I'm happy about it. Probably, honestly, it's better to be in the final winning 3-set, 4-set matches. That's the better way physically, but it is what it is, and I'm proud and looking forward to the final to give my 100% again.
So Medvedev there, energised by the 5-setter that he played last night, mentally anyway. So he'll face Jannik Sinner, who has surely a lot more left in the tank, you would think. He did get past Novak Djokovic easily, it has to be said. Djokovic, his comments after the match were that it was his worst Grand Slam match that he'd ever played, and his hopes of completing the Golden Slam this year, so with the Paris Olympics coming up, that would be all 4 Grand Slams and a gold medal at the Olympics, those have been dashed. But he was confident and did have high hopes for the rest of the season, so definitely not writing off the 24-time champion just yet.
Wait and see. Now, what about the women's final? That's happening tonight. How's that looking?
So the defending champion, Aryna Sabalenka, she goes up against China's Qinwen Zheng. And Sabalenka hoping to become the first woman to go back-to-back at the Australian Open since Victoria Azarenka in 2012-2013. And she's playing very dominant tennis this tournament so far, hasn't dropped a set. She might put it down to a pre-match ritual that she started at the beginning of the tournament, signing the bald head of her fitness trainer, Jason Stacey. It worked after the first match, so she's been doing it ever since. He's not too thrilled about it, I don't think. But she comes up against China's Qinwen Zheng, seeded number 12, but her ranking will go up at the end of this tournament. She has never got this far in a slam before, so really uncharted territory for her as well. All of China's hopes on her shoulders 10 years after Li Na won China's only singles title in a Grand Slam. She's played a lot more tennis so far this tournament. She's played a few 3-setters, but she hasn't played anyone in the top 50 so far. So she's really hasn't been tested by the very best players at this slam. And meeting Aryna Sabalenka in the final is sure to be a huge challenge for her. The match gets underway at 7:30 tonight, and there has been some crowds trickling in so far, so we'll have to wait and see how that pans out.
Thank you, Erin, for that, and enjoy Melbourne while you're there. So let's check the weather in the capitals for today. Brisbane, a shower or 2. Sydney, cloudy, reaching 26 degrees. Canberra, partly cloudy. Melbourne, also becoming cloudy. Hobart, a shower or 2. Adelaide, partly cloudy. Perth is sunny. And Darwin, rain with a top of 30 degrees. That's the latest from ABC News. Thanks for joining us.